Hello hockey fans and welcome back to NHL Replayed, the series where we use the power of video games to replay the last 2 decades of NHL history. In today's episode, we are going to play through the 5th year of our timeline, so join me as we replay the 2006-2007 NHL season. Now before we jump into NHL 07, let's take a look at what actually happened during the 06-07 season. Running from October 4th, 2006 until June 6th, 2007, the 06-07 NHL season saw 30 teams compete in an 82-game schedule, with the top 8 teams from either conference securing their place in the Stanley Cup playoffs. So how did the regular season play out? Well, the Eastern Conference looked a little something like this. In first place were the Buffalo Sabres, in second were the New Jersey Devils, Atlanta took third, Ottawa took fourth, and the Pittsburgh Penguins took fifth, while the New York Rangers, the Tampa Bay Lightning, and the New York Islanders finished in 6th, 7th, and 8th place respectively. Then the teams that didn't make the postseason, in 9th were the Toronto Maple Leafs, 10th were the Montreal Canadiens, Carolina finished in 11th, Florida finished in 12th, while the Boston Bruins, the Washington Capitals, and the Philadelphia Flyers finished in 13th, 14th, and 15th at the bottom of the Eastern Conference. Now the Western Conference saw the Detroit Red Wings finish in first, the Anaheim Ducks finish in second, Vancouver, Nashville, and San Jose finish in 3rd, 4th, and 5th, while the Dallas Stars finished in 6th, Minnesota finished in 7th, and Calgary finished in 8th. Then the teams that missed the playoffs, the Colorado Avalanche in 9th place, the St. Louis Blues in 10th place, Columbus, Edmonton, and Chicago finishing 11th, 12th, and 13th respectively, while the Los Angeles Kings finished in 14th, and lastly were the Phoenix Coyotes in 15th place, dead last in the Western Conference. And who took home each of the league's awards that year? Well, the President's Trophy for the best team during the regular season went to none other than the Buffalo Sabres, thanks to them registering a very impressive 53, 22, and 7 record, which was good enough for 113 points on the year. Obviously, Buffalo had a pretty good year the season prior. They managed to match that and go even higher this season and take home the award as the best team during the regular season, so nice job, Sabres. Now, the Art Ross Trophy and the Hart Memorial Trophy once again went to the same player, this time being Sidney Crosby of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who racked up an incredible 36 goals and 120 points in just 79 regular season games. This was Crosby's sophomore year in the league, and he gets himself the highest scorer and the league MVP awards. You can understand why with a record like that. He didn't score the most goals, but boy did he rack up those assists, folks. The Rocket Richard Trophy for the highest goal scorer went to Vincent Lecavalier of the Tampa Bay Lightning, who registered a whopping 52 goals and 108 points in 82 games. So not only did he lead the entire league in goal scoring, but he also racked up over 100 points that year, well over a point per game pace, led the Lightning in every way possible, so a good job by Lecavalier. The Norris Trophy for the best defenseman once again went to Nicholas Lidstrom of the Detroit Red Wings, who racked up 13 goals and 62 points in 80 regular season games that year. Not exactly as productive as he was the year before when he also won the Norris Trophy, but he gets his hands on the Norris once again, and it certainly wouldn't be the last time he would do that in the NHL, certainly up there on the pantheon of best defensemen, so no surprise he took home another Norris, right? The Vezina Trophy for the best goaltender in the league once again went to Martin Brodeur of the New Jersey Devils, thanks to him registering a 48, 23, and 7 record, a 2.18 goals against average, and a .922 save percentage in 78 regular season games. There were only 4 games that the Devils played that year that Brodeur did not start in during that season, and considering he put up some incredible numbers in the process, it's no surprise that he won the Vezina once again. It wasn't the first time he won it, it certainly wouldn't be the last, so congratulations to Brodeur, another fantastic performance by him. The Calder Trophy for Rookie of the Year went to Evgeny Malkin of the Pittsburgh Penguins, thanks to him registering an impressive 33 goals and 85 points in just 78 regular season games. So not only did Malkin play pretty much the entire regular season schedule, he also scored well over a point per game pace across the entire year, and he was a 30 goal scorer. No wonder he won the Calder Trophy, right? What an incredible rookie season from him. Penultimately, the Jack Adams Award given to the best coach that year was handed to Alain Vigneault of the Vancouver Canucks, thanks to him leading Vancouver to a 49, 26, and 7 record that year, which was good enough for 3rd place in the Western Conference. A 3rd place finish in the West, and only 3 or 4 wins back from the President's Trophy winning Buffalo Sabres. That's a pretty strong season if you ask me, folks. And last but by no means least, the Lady Byng trophy for the most gentlemanly player was once again handed to Pavel Datsyuk of the Detroit Red Wings, thanks to him scoring 87 points and racking up only 20 penalty minutes in 79 regular season games that year. He was the gentlemanly player the year before, he does it once again, and considering those stats, I am absolutely not surprised. What a gentlemanly player, there's a reason he's one of my favourites, you know. But what about the postseason? How did the 2007 Stanley Cup playoffs play out? Well, after 25 days of hard-fought battles, the Anaheim Ducks would come out on top, as they defeated the Ottawa Senators in 5 games in the finals, and lifted the 2007 Stanley Cup. Not only would Anaheim clinch their first championship in franchise history, their captain would be crowned playoff MVP, as Ducks defenseman Scott Niedermayer would earn the Conn Smythe Trophy thanks to his 11 points in 21 playoff games, and him playing at least 27 minutes of ice time in 16 of those 21 contests. Now that's how you lead by example, folks. So now that we know what actually happened during the 06-07 season, let's jump into the video game and see how our simulation plays out. Will history repeat itself, or will a new timeline be formed? Let's find out, shall we? So here we are, ladies and gentlemen, in NHL 07. This is of course EA Sports' first foray into the 7th generation of consoles, and I'm playing on the Xbox 360 version of this game, for those of you who were wondering in the comments. Anyway, let's just jump into it, shall we? Since the Anaheim Ducks won the 2007 Stanley Cup, and since we have been playing as the actual Stanley Cup champions throughout this entire series so far, I think it makes sense for us to pick the Ducks with GM Odd Man Rush, don't you think? Before we look at our team, I just want to remind you that injuries are being turned off for this. We haven't had injuries on for the entire series. I want to make sure that the players stay healthy. I want to see the most ideal NHL possible. If injuries weren't a thing, how would the season turn out? Let's find out, shall we? And here we are at the Dynasty mode main menu. As you can see, there is a massive calendar on the screen, so we can go through every single game, every single month of the season really easily. I must say I'm very glad that this is the main menu for Dynasty mode, so good job NHL 07, this is exactly what I wanted for this series. Now before we actually jump into any of the games, I think it makes sense to take a look at our roster, so let's see what we've got. Now, just like the last few episodes, I'm going to press the best lines button and edit the lines like that. So our lines are as follows. The first forward line, we have Rob Niedermayer at 77 overall, with Andy McDonald at 84, and Teemu Selanne at 87 overall, and they have a 90 chemistry, which gives them a +4 overall bonus. So Rob Niedermayer is playing an 81 overall, Andy McDonald is an 88, and Teemu Selanne is a 91, so good job there, I'm very happy with that. Then the second forward line, we've got Todd Marchant at 79 overall, Ryan Getzlaff and Corey Perry both at 80 overall, so a decent second forward line there. The third forward line, we have Chris Kunitz with Paulson and Dustin Penner, 73, 75, and 72 overall respectively. And then last but by no means least, the fourth forward line, we have Travis Moen with Wright and Hedstrom, 67, 72, and 73 overall. Our defensive core looks something like this, folks. The first pair has Scott Niedermayer at 94 overall, and alongside him is Chris Pronger at 92 overall. And if that wasn't great enough, their chemistry together is 80, gives them a +3 overall bonus, so actually, Scott Niedermayer is a 97 overall, while Chris Pronger is a 95 overall. Well, no wonder the Anaheim Ducks relied so much on these guys during their actual season. They're the only two bona fide superstars they have, and they're playing on the same defensive pair, my god. Then the second defensive pair, we have Wisniewski at 75 overall, with Francois Beauchemin at 76 overall, but the great thing is they have 100 chemistry together to give them a +5 overall, so actually Wisniewski's playing an 80 overall, while Beauchemin is an 81, so that's really helpful. And then the third defensive pair, we have Sean O'Donnell with DePenta, 75 overall and 71 overall respectively, a +2 overall bonus due to their chemistry, so 77 and 73. The goaltenders for the Ducks, we have Jean-Sebastien Giguère, 86 overall as our starter, and then Ilya Bryzgalov, why you have to be mad, 83 overall as our backup. So, as we saw, the forward core isn't the strongest. Defensively, our top four is pretty solid, especially with those chemistry bonuses, and we've got some pretty decent goaltending, so I imagine that we're going to be relying a lot on our goaltending and our top four defensemen to really carry the load. If the forward group can chip in a few goals here and there, I would really appreciate that. but I guess we're just gonna have to see how it goes, right? The roster is set, the team is ready. I think it's time to begin our 06-07 regular season schedule, don't you? Obviously, we've got a lot of games to play, and I'm very curious to see how the team performs here. The fact that injuries are turned off is going to help us massively, I think, because we really don't have that much depth on this roster, but likewise for all the other teams across the league, it helps them out too, so I feel like that makes it fair in that regard. But let's play through the first 10 games of our season and see where we're at during that span, so I'll catch you again in a minute, folks. Our first 10 games are in the books, and as you can see, we could have done better, but we could have done worse. We currently have a 5-4-0-1 record so far this year. We had a 3-game losing streak midway through the month of October, but we have won 3 of our last 4 games, which is really helpful. I don't know what the third category in the record is, because that's obviously a 0. I imagine that could potentially be ties, but then again, the lockout got rid of ties, and we're well past the lockout in NHL 07, so I'm not entirely sure what that third category is. If any of you know, do let me know in the comments below. I'd be really interested to know. But yeah, we could have done better, we could have done worse. So let's take a look at our players and see how well they're performing. Our first line centre, Andy McDonald, is currently leading the team with 11 points in 10 games. The only player above a point a game so far this year, and Teemu Selanne with 10 points in 10 games also. It's nice to see that our forward core is chipping in some offense. We really do need that given our lineup. Then we've got Scott Niedermayer in third with 9 points in 10 games, Ryan Getzlaf with 6 points in 10 games, and Jonathan Hedstrom, I believe a fourth line guy, 5 points in 10 games, and that ranks our top 5 on the team, so we need better performances from Perry and especially Pronger, but I guess we'll have to see how they do. And for our goaltenders, Ilya Bryzgalov has played a single game, and it looks like it was in relief of Jean-Sébastien Giguère, since he hasn't registered a win or a loss or anything like that, whereas Giguère has a 5-5-0 record with a 3.46 goals against average and an 8.82 save percentage, so we really need Giguère to play better in the net, we really need the defense to play strong in front of him, and we need our forward core to keep chipping in those goals like they have been. Let's play through the next 10 games of our season to reach 20 games in the year, the kind of quarter point in the regular season, and see where the team's at that point. We'll check the NHL standings, see where we match up against the rest of the league, we'll check our player stats once again, see who's leading the team, and yeah, let's just see how it goes, so I'll catch you again after game 20, guys. We're 20 games in now, and as you can see, the Anaheim Ducks had a really bad stretch during that last 10 games. We are currently 7-12-0-1 on the season, and we went on a 5-6 game losing streak there during that span. We won, I believe, 2 games during that stretch. Really not very good for the Ducks. I imagine that our lack of depth, especially in our forward core, is really biting us right now, and we really can't compete with some of the top teams in the league. And then add to that the injuries being turned off and every single roster being at their best means that we can't really keep up with the top players from the other teams. So we're going to take a look at where we're sitting in the standings, but I'm not expecting it to be very good, you know? I hate to break it to you guys, but the Anaheim Ducks currently sit 28th out of 30 in the NHL standings. We have a 37.5% win percentage, 15 points on the year, which really isn't great. So yeah, we're a bottom feeder team right now, and the only thing that's not putting us at the bottom is the fact that St. Louis have yet to play another game in hand, and Columbus have 2 games in hand, so we're really not doing very well to start the year. I really hope that we turn this around during the next 3 quarters, you know. Teemu Selanne leads the team in scoring with 21 points in 20 games, Andy McDonald with 20 points in 20 games, so our first line centre and our first line right wing are getting the job done. Niedermayer has 18 points in 20 games, so we've got 3 solid scorers on the team that are roughly, if not over a point a game pace. But after that, it drops off dramatically. Ryan Getzlaf with 12 points, Chris Pronger with 12 points, we need more from him, Rob Niedermayer with 10 points, he's obviously on that first line, and then Francois Beauchemin in 7th with 10 points in 10 games, so we only have 7 players scoring at least a point every 2 games. That's not good enough, no wonder we're down the bottom of the standings, you know. And our goaltenders, it's a very similar story too. Ilya Bryzgalov has played a pair of games in relief of Jean-Sébastien Giguère, who has played all 20 games, has a 7-13-0 record, a 3.64 goals against average, and an 8.78 save percentage, so we really need this team to perform a lot better down the stretch, otherwise we are going to be looking at the first overall draft pick instead of the Stanley Cup. Oh, I really hope I haven't tainted history again. Why is it always me? I think we should simulate through the next 20-21 games or so and reach the midway point of the 06-07 season. Obviously, if things keep going the way that they're currently going, we're not going to be very happy and there's going to be a lot more regulation losses than there are wins. However, 20 games can be a make or break stint for a team during the NHL season. Maybe we bounce back, go on a bit of a solid run, maybe get ourselves back in the playoff picture. Is it going to be a good result for us? Is it going to be very sad for us? Let's find out. I'll check back in after the next 21 games. We've reached the midway point of our season, and as you can see by our record, it's been very much more of the same for the Anaheim Ducks. We are currently 14, 22, 0 and 5 in 41 games during the 06-07 season. If we take a look at the last month, a bunch of losses. I will say that we went on a 3 or 4 game winning streak, then we had 3 or 4 games where we lost every single game in an overtime or a shootout, so we picked up some extra points there, but then pretty much from the 9th of December onwards, we got 3 wins in like 9 games, so really hasn't been a great performance for us. Every single team we seem to come up against, we seem to be losing. I'm very curious to see where this puts us in the standings. I'm expecting us to be in the basement. 29th place. 29th out of 30 teams, folks. And you want to know the best part about it? The 30th place team, the New York Islanders, have 3 games in hand and are only 1 point back from us. They literally need 1 regulation win in their 3 games in hand in order to jump over us and leapfrog us in the standings, and then we are sitting in the basement as the worst team in the NHL this year. I said that the forward depth and the depth on this roster could be an issue, and here we are. It just goes to show you that I might have been right. I'm actually genuinely surprised Anaheim even made the playoffs with the roster they have, given the lack of depth, and let alone go ahead and win the Stanley Cup that year as well. Like, that actually kind of baffles me when you look at that team on paper. They really must have had some kind of surgence there, because my goodness, they are not a good team compared to the rest of the league in this game, are they? Since we've reached the midway point of the season and our team is doing absolutely terribly compared to everybody else, I think it only makes sense to check out the leading scorers across the entire NHL so far this year. And it looks like the Great 8 Alexandre Ovechkin is currently leading the pack thanks to his 34 goals and 75 points in just 40 regular season games. He's scoring at over an assist a game and nearly a goal every single game. Ovechkin's almost averaging 2 points a game across the entire year. I mean, he's getting his career off to a fantastic start, that's for sure. Then in second place, Brad Richards with 32 goals and 72 points in 39 games. 1 game in hand on Ovechkin and only 3 points back, so he's very much still in the hunt. The Atlanta Thrashers, Ilya Kovalchuk with 32 goals and 72 points in 41 games so far this year. Vincent Lecavalier, the actual Rocket Richard winner in real life, 31 goals, 71 points in 39 games. And rounding out the top 5, Daniel Alfredson of the Ottawa Senators, 34 goals and 69 points in 41 games. However, we should note that Jarome Iginla, 38 goals in 38 games played, currently tied for 6th place in the standings with Martin St. Louis, but wow, a goal a game so far this season. Nice job, Iggy. So come on then, who's leading our team in scoring? Well, it looks like Teemu Selanne has 21 goals and 48 points in 41 games this year, so he's well over a point per game. Well done to him, first 20-goal scorer on the season. Then Andy McDonald, once again, still over a point a game, 44 points in 41 games. Scott Niedermayer doing a fantastic job from the back end, 39 points in 41 games. Chris Pronger's really jumped up in those standings now, 30 points in 41 games. Still not where I'd like him, considering he's 95 overall, but he is a defensive defenseman in this game, so I'm not surprised. And then Rob Niedermayer, the 73 overall guy on the first line, 21 points in 41 games. So there's only 4 players on our team that are over a point every 2 game pace. Really not good enough, boys. I'm not surprised we're so far down in the standings. And goaltenders, Ilya Bryzgalov did not play a single minute of NHL hockey during those last 21 games, whereas Jaguar is 14 and 27 on the season with a 3.54 goals against average and an 8.83 save percentage. So Jaguar is pretty much playing just as well as the guys in front of him. I don't think it's all Jaguar's fault for having such a terrible season. I think the defense in front of him haven't been good enough, and when they haven't been good enough, Jaguar hasn't been good enough to steal us a game or two. So it's very disappointing, but it is what it is, you know? So it looks like our chances of making the playoffs have pretty much evaporated before our very eyes, really, since we're one of, if not the worst team across the entire NHL this year. So I think it makes sense for us to simulate through to the trade deadline, pretty much the 3-quarter mark of the year, and see if the Ducks can produce a solid second half of the season. Obviously, we've had a really poor start. If we can bounce back during the second half and produce a winning record and maybe go on a bit of a winning streak here and there, maybe the Ducks can climb back up and put themselves in playoff contention. I'm expecting the worst here. I'm expecting us to really crash and burn for the rest of the season, but I am very interested to see what happens. So we'll simulate up until the trade deadline, and let's see how we do. We've just simulated through the 2007 NHL trade deadline, and as you can see, the Anaheim Ducks Ducks produced a much better performance during that stretch, but still we are an under 500 team. So our current record is 27, 30, 0 and 8, and considering, as you can see on the screen, we won 8 of 9 games during the month of February, so we had a really good month of February, all things considered. We're a lot closer to 500 than we were during the midway point of the season, but still, it's kind of too little too late for us at this point, isn't it? We've put together a solid second half of the year, really starting to string together some wins. A lot of the losses that we've taken have gone in overtime or a shootout as well, so we've picked up points, but our chances of making the playoffs have been all but obliterated if you ask me. Let's check the standings and see where we're at. Despite our improved stretch during the month of February, the Anaheim Ducks still sit 26th out of 30 teams across the entire NHL standings. We have played one more game than all the other teams around us pretty much. We've got a 3-point cushion on the 27th place New York Islanders, so that's pretty good for us, but it's looking like we're going to be a bottom feeder team in the NHL this season. We have a 47.7 win percentage on the year, 62 points on the season. It's really not looking good for us, is it? Obviously, the first half of the season kind of put the final nail in the coffin for us. Let's just hope we finish strong for the rest of the year, you know? Teemu Selanne is still leading our team in points with 39 goals and 80 points in 65 games, so a really strong performance from our best rated forward. Andy McDonald just over a point a game still, 23 goals, 67 points in 65 games. Chris Pronger has really stepped up while Scott Niedermayer has kind of taken a step back, both of them with 55 points in 65 games. Then Rob Niedermayer, 38 points in 65 games, so after Niedermayer and Pronger it really dips once again. So once again our star players are getting the job done, they're really producing the points, but the depth on our roster and the lower ranked guys really haven't pulled their weight, which really sucks. Francois Beauchemin rounds out the top 6 with 32 points in 65 games. Hedstrom has 14 goals and 30 points in 65 games, which really isn't bad for a fourth line guy, but when you see that Getzlaf has 28 points in 65 games and Corey Perry has 25 points in 65 games, and they're both a minus 11 on the season, you really needed these young guys to step up and get the job done, and unfortunately they haven't, so what can you do? Regarding our goaltenders, Ilya Bryzgalov once again did not see a single minute of NHL action during that span. He's still played 2 games this season and saved every shot he's faced, so well done to him. Whereas Jean-Sébastien Giguère, 65 games played, 27, 38 and 0 on the season, with a 3.38 goals against average and an 8.87 save percentage. So just like the rest of the team hasn't really stepped up, Giguère hasn't stepped up for us, which is quite surprising given his track record, given him winning the Conn Smythe despite being on the losing team less than half a decade prior, but it is what it is, you know. We've reached the epic conclusion of the 06-07 NHL season, and the Anaheim Ducks have finished the year with a rather disappointing 34, 39, 0 and 9 record this season. Obviously, given the way that the year was going during the previous simulations we did, we were kind of expecting a result like this, and if we take a look at the month of March, we did string together our fair share of wins. We took a decent amount of overtime and shootout losses as well to pick up a few extra points here and there, but unfortunately, it wasn't enough for the Anaheim Ducks. We finished the season with a well under 500 record, couldn't even win 35 of our 82 games that year, and considering that the Anaheim Ducks actually went on to win the Stanley Cup this season, we were well out of the playoff race, and it's just a really disappointing season for all involved, actually. Considering we've made the playoffs with several teams over the last couple of episodes, it's kind of strange to not have a Cup champion make it through to the playoffs at the very least, and let alone the Stanley Cup Finals or anything. But I guess this is the way the simulation went. Like I've said the whole way through, I think the lack of depth for the Anaheim Ducks really came back to bite them, especially since no injuries were in play for every single team, so every single roster was playing the best players they possibly could. And this was just the way the dice fell for us. If we simulated this another 9 times out of 10, could we have made the playoffs? Yeah, most likely. But unfortunately, the one I caught on the recording is the one where the Anaheim Ducks did absolutely terribly. Let's take a look at the standings and see where everything finished, yeah? So the Calgary Flames won the 2006-2007 President's Trophy thanks to their 57, 20 and 5 record, which was good enough for 119 points in 82 games. So the Flames are crowned the best team in the NHL during the regular season with their 72.6% win percentage, and interestingly they narrowly beat out the Phoenix Coyotes. The team that finished last place in the Western Conference during the actual season managed to finish second place and only 2 points back from the President's Trophy. Only in a video game, right? The simulation really treated them well, didn't it? yet. Now, if we take a look at the Western Conference specifically, obviously the Calgary Flames in first place, the Phoenix Coyotes, of course, in second. The Detroit Red Wings took the third seed in the West, despite being 15th place in the conference standings, or the league standings, thanks to the top team from each division getting the 1, 2, and 3 seed. Then fourth place were the San Jose Sharks, fifth place the Minnesota Wild, sixth place were the Edmonton Oilers, the Los Angeles Kings took 7th, and the Vancouver Canucks taking the final playoff berth in 8th place, despite only getting a 52.4% win percentage. They only had just above a 500 record, and they narrowly clawed their way into the playoffs. Then the teams that missed it, the Columbus Blue Jackets in 9th place, missed by only 2 points, which must be heartbreaking. The Nashville Predators in 10th place, who were very close behind, the Dallas Stars in 11th, the Chicago Blackhawks in 12th, the St. Louis Blues in 13th, us, the Anaheim Ducks, in 14th place in the Western Conference, and last but definitely least, the Colorado Avalanche in 15th place in the Western Conference with a 36, 42, and 4 record on the year for 76 points that season. Only 1 point behind our Anaheim Ducks, which really doesn't make me feel good. Now, if we compare these results to what actually happened in the Western Conference during the 06-07 season, I think the two biggest changes out of all of them are the Anaheim Ducks finishing penultimately in the Western Conference in our simulation, whereas they of course made the playoffs and went on to win the Stanley Cup that year, so that's a huge change within the NHL's timeline. And the only other really notable change I can see is the Phoenix Coyotes, who were dead last in the actual NHL standings in the Western Conference that year. They finished 2nd place, so clearly they managed to surpass all expectations. They managed to go on a bit of a run during the season, and they finished 2 points back from the President's Trophy, so they had a really good job there, and they really changed the timeline for themselves. The only other notable change I can see is the Detroit Red Wings, who finished 1st place in the West during the actual season, finished 15th in the NHL standings during the season, and they only managed to get the 3rd seed in the West thanks to their terrible division around them. So Detroit were obviously a powerhouse during the mid to late 2000s. They didn't get the job done, which is very interesting to see in this simulation, you know? Now, if we take a look at the Eastern Conference, the Buffalo Sabres finished in 1st place with a 49, 27, and 6 record for 104 points that year. In 2nd were the Pittsburgh Penguins with 101 points, the only other team in the East with 100 points that year. In 3rd place, the Florida Panthers. In 4th, the Ottawa Senators. In 5th, the Philadelphia Flyers. 6th place were the Tampa Bay Lightning. Toronto with the penultimate playoff spot in 7th, and the Atlanta Thrashers rounding out the postseason berths in 8th place. Then the teams that didn't make the playoffs, the Carolina Hurricanes in 9th, the Boston Bruins in 10th, the New Jersey Devils in 11th, which is very interesting, the Montreal Canadiens in 12th, the New York Rangers in 13th, the New York Islanders in 14th, and dead last in 15th place, the Washington Capitals with a 32, 41, and 9 record for 73 points that year. Now, if we compare these standings to what actually happened in the East that season, I think the biggest change is the New Jersey Devils, who finished 2nd place in the Eastern Conference during the actual season, finished 11th place in their division during this simulation, which obviously very strange, and especially considering Martin Brodeur won the Vezina Trophy that year, very strange to see that the New Jersey Devils finished so low. I think it's interesting to see that the Buffalo Sabres still finished 1st place in the Eastern Conference, so both in the video game and in real life they got the job done. Obviously didn't win the President's Trophy in this simulation, but I think they'll still take 1st place in the Eastern Conference. Also, teams like Florida, Philadelphia, and Toronto all making the postseason in this simulation when they didn't actually do so in real life is actually really interesting, because clearly they got the job done over the teams that actually did make the postseason, obviously the New Jerseys, the New York Rangers, teams like that. So really interesting to see where these teams finished up in these standings, but that's the way the simulation goes sometimes. You gotta roll with the punches. The simulation takes no prisoners. So how did the Ducks player stats finish? Well, it looks like Teemu Selanne finished the season as the Ducks' leading scorer, thanks to potting 45 goals and 100 points in 82 regular season games. It's really nice that we finished the year with a 100-point scorer. Obviously, not very much else went right for the Ducks this season, so the fact that we had a guy reach triple digits, I'm very happy with that. I'll take that as a little win, you know? Then 2nd place, Andy McDonald with 32 goals and 89 points in 82 games, so we only had 2 players score over a point a game pace, and it turned out to be our first-line centre and our first-line winger, so they got the job done, thank you to them. Chris Pronger finishes as the 3rd leading scorer with 20 goals and 72 points in 82 games. A 20-goal scorer from a defensive defenseman, I'll take that any day of the week. Then Scott Niedermayer in 4th place, 18 goals, 68 points in 82 games. Then rounding out the top 5, Rob Niedermayer with 18 goals, 48 points in 82 games. I imagine that a lot of that has to do with playing on the top line with Selanne and McDonald, but, you know, he got the points, gotta give him that. Then Ryan Getzlaf, number 6, with 9 goals and 41 points in 82 games. Really disappointed with that performance. I was hoping the second line would step up a little bit more, but unfortunately, that's the way the cookie crumbled. Francois Beauchemin in 7th with 8 goals and 39 points in 82 games. Todd Marchant, 11 goals and 36 points in 82 games also. So Marchant was a 4th line guy for us, I believe, or was he a 2nd line guy? I can't remember. Doesn't matter. The team did terribly. He scored at under a point every 2-game pace. It is what it is. And for our goaltending, Ilya Bryzgalov got to play half a dozen games down the stretch to add to his 2 previous. He registered a 1-4-0 record during that span, so maybe we should have kept him on the bench. A 3.15 goals against average, a 902 save percentage for him, whereas Jean-Sébastien Giguère played 77 games that season, a 33-44 record, a 340 goals against average, and an 887 save percentage. So really disappointing performance by our netminders, but once again, I don't think you can really blame them given the players that they had out in front and the lack of production and lack of defense from them. It was kind of both sides did just as terribly as the other, and that's why we had such a terrible season. And who led the league in scoring? Well, none other than Ilya Kovalchuk of the Atlanta Thrashers, thanks to him registering a whopping 71 goals and 152 points in just 82 regular season games. The guy scored almost 2 points a game over the course of an entire season of play. God, turning these injuries off really helped these superstars, didn't it? Then in second place you had Marian Hossa of the Atlanta Thrashers also, 50 goals and 142 points in 82 games. Third place Alex Ovechkin, the Great 8, 65 goals, 140 points in 82 games. Fourth place Rick Nash with 71 goals and 131 points in 82 regular season games. And rounding out the top 5, the actual Rocket Richard winner, Vinny Lecavalier, 59 goals, 129 points in 82 games. So if you take a look at the goals perspective, so it looks like Rick Nash and Ilya Kovalchuk are going to share the Rocket Richard trophy since they both scored 71 goals in 82 games that year. Really interesting to note actually, because these two did win the Rocket Richard together during the 03-04 season alongside Jerome McGinley as well, so whilst they didn't do so during the 03-04 season in our simulation, they've managed to do so during the 06-07 season, so history has repeated itself only several years later than initially intended. Oh, this is interesting, isn't it? Since we were one of the worst teams across the entire NHL this season and we were far from clinching a playoff berth, we obviously haven't made the postseason, so we don't know what's going on, so let's just simulate to the end of the postseason. Let's go midway through June. I imagine the playoffs will be done by then, and who's gonna win it? I'm very curious to see. The Toronto Maple Leafs have won the 2007 Stanley Cup. You heard me right, ladies and gentlemen. The Leafs have won their 2nd championship in the last 4 or 5 years now, and they have taken home their 2nd cup in this series alone. God, the EA simulation has gone crazy this season, right? And not only that, they also managed to take the Stanley Cup in a 7-game series against the President's Trophy winning Calgary Flames. The first seed from the Western Conference managed to live up to their regular season reputation, make it all the way to the final round, the 2007 Stanley Cup Finals, but the 7th seed Toronto Maple Leafs from the Eastern Conference managed to steal it away from them in a 7-game series. Well, that was an ending I definitely wasn't expecting. God, only in a video game, right guys? So let's take a look at the playoff tree before we move on. So in the Western Conference, we had the 1st seeded Calgary Flames against the 8th seeded Vancouver Canucks, the 2nd seeded Phoenix Coyotes against the 7th seed LA Kings, the 3rd seed Detroit Red Wings against Edmonton as the 6th seed, and then San Jose as the 4th seed against Minnesota as the 5th seed. Calgary defeated Vancouver in 5 games, Phoenix narrowly edged out LA in 7 games, Edmonton did the same to Detroit in 7 games, and San Jose took a 7-game victory against Minnesota in round 1. Then Calgary defeated Edmonton in 5 games in the 2nd round, while San Jose defeated Phoenix in 7 games, so both of those sides had bitter 7-game series back to back. Then in the Western Conference Finals, the 1st seeded Calgary Flames, who were a lot more rested, took a 5-game series victory against the 4th seeded San Jose Sharks. They make it through to the Stanley Cup Finals. They lose in 7 games to the Toronto Maple Leafs. Now for the Eastern Conference, the 1st seed Buffalo Sabres were up against the 8th seed Atlanta Thrashers, the 2nd seed Pittsburgh Penguins against the 7th seed Toronto Maple Leafs, the 3rd seed Florida Panthers against the 6th seed Tampa Bay Lightning, so an all-Florida playoff round there, and then the 4th seed Ottawa Senators against the 5th seed Philadelphia Flyers. Atlanta managed to take a surprise 7-game victory against Buffalo in round 1, and Toronto took it in 6 games against Pittsburgh, so they advanced, and then Tampa had a 6-game victory against Florida, with Philadelphia having a 5-game victory against Ottawa. Then in the second round, the Philadelphia Flyers a 7-game victory against the Atlanta Thrashers to advance through to the Eastern Conference Finals, and a 7-game series between Toronto and Tampa, but Toronto, the slightly lower seed, manages to edge them out. Then a 6-game series in the Eastern Conference Finals, Toronto versus Philadelphia, the 5th and the 7th seeds going up in the Final Four, and Toronto managed to edge it out, and then a 7-game victory against the Calgary Flames. So congratulations to the Toronto Maple Leafs for winning their 2nd cup in the series. It's been a little while since they won their first one, but they're back and by the looks of it better than ever. Obviously, this has really veered away from the original timeline of the NHL. The 2 finalists never made it this far, with Toronto not even making it to the playoffs that year anyway, so the fact that it was supposed to be Anaheim versus Ottawa in the final and we got Toronto versus Calgary, it's pretty cool that we got an all-Canadian final, but the Toronto Maple Leafs managed to edge out the President's Trophy winners and take home their 2nd cup in this series, so well done to them, I guess. God, getting 2 cups in 4 or 5 years sure feels a lot better than not getting a single one in half a century, doesn't it, Leafs fans? So let's finish off by taking a look at the awards and see who took home each of the trophies. Of course, the 06-07 Stanley Cup went to none other than the Toronto Maple Leafs. The President's Trophy, like we mentioned earlier, went to the Calgary Flames. Came ever so close, 1 game away, but just couldn't get the job done. The Clarence Campbell Bowl, obviously for the best team in the playoffs out of the West, goes to Calgary. The Prince of Wales Trophy, the flip side for the East, goes to Toronto, because of course. The Art Ross Trophy for the league leader in scoring goes to Ilya Kovalchuk, like we saw at the end of the season. Almost 2 points a game over the entire season. I'm not surprised, he deserves it. The Hart Memorial Trophy also goes to Ilya Kovalchuk, and like I said, almost 2 points a game over an entire season. Obviously injuries were turned off, but the fact that he was able to do that, I am not surprised he was deemed as the league MVP. The Norris Trophy goes to Brian McCabe of the Toronto Maple Leafs, so the best defenseman, Nicholas Lidstrom, gets upset. He doesn't get back-to-back James Norris trophies. He doesn't get 3 of them in 4 years as well, because Brian McCabe of the Toronto Maple Leafs, he kind of had a very interesting tenure with Toronto during his career, especially after the lockout, so the fact that he was able to come back and win a Norris in this timeline, I guess he had a bit of second wind and kind of had a career resurgence, so well done to him. The Lady Byng Trophy goes to Ilya Kovalchuk, so he's the league MVP, he's the leading scorer, and he's also the most gentlemanly player across the entire league, so Datsuk doesn't get back-to-back trophies in that regard as well. God, Detroit really didn't do very well for their trophies in this game compared to real life, did they? But Ilya Kovalchuk, he has taken all the awards home. Then the Calder Memorial Trophy for Rookie of the Year goes to Yuri Hudler of the Detroit Red Wings, so Evgeny Malkin, you didn't get it, not back-to-back Russian players this time. This time it's Yuri Hudler managing to get the job done, so well done to him, Rookie of the Year, and clearly he deserved it. The Conn Smythe Trophy for Playoff MVP goes to Matt Sundin of the Toronto Maple Leafs. The captain leads his team to another Stanley Cup, gets himself named Conn Smythe winner, Playoff MVP, and probably deservedly so. So, well done to Matt Sundin, got yourself another trophy. The Vezina Trophy for Best Goaltender goes to Roberto Luongo of the Vancouver Canucks. Very interesting. So Martin Brodeur doesn't get his 3rd Vezina in the last 4 years. We got a young upstart coming in. Well, he's in his mid-20s at this point, but Roberto Luongo comes in, gets the job done, so nicely done, Luongo. The William M. Jennings Trophy goes to Evgeny Nabokov of the San Jose Sharks. Allowed the fewest goals during the regular season, so well done to him. Pretty decent job. The Bill Masterton goes to Doug Waite of the St. Louis Blues, who shows, exemplifies the qualities of perseverance, sportsmanship, and dedication. The Jack Adams Award for Coach of the Year goes to Ron Wilson of the San Jose Sharks. Obviously, San Jose made it all the way through to the Western Conference Finals during the postseason. They finished with the 3rd best record in the Western Conference, but the 4th seed because Detroit took the 3rd seed with their division. So well done to Ron Wilson of the San Jose Sharks. He got the job done, led San Jose onto a pretty surprising run all the way through to a couple of games away from the Stanley Cup Finals. So, I mean, it's pretty deserving if you ask me. And then the Selke Trophy goes to Doug Weight of the St. Louis Blues. So he takes home the Masterton, he takes home the Selke as well, the best defensive forward in the league, so well done to him. The Lester B. Pearson Award for the NHLPA's Most Outstanding Player goes to Rick Nash of the Columbus Blue Jackets. Obviously, he tied the league lead in goals with Ilya Kovalchuk for 71 in just 82 games, so it's nice to see him getting a bit of love from the awards and from the NHL Players Association. Obviously, he didn't have as many points as Kovalchuk did, but the fact that he tied him in goals and almost went a goal a game over the course of an entire regular season is absolutely incredible, so it's nice to see him getting some love there. And then the Rocket Richard Trophy goes to Ilya Kovalchuk for the most goals in the season. Obviously, Rick Nash tied him for goals as well, so I think it should say comma Rick Nash there. So Ilya Kovalchuk and Rick Nash both take home the Rocket Richard Trophy. They get to share a little trophy together. They did so in the real world several years prior, but in this simulation they get to do so here, so well done to all of them. Now that the season is over and the Stanley Cup has been awarded, I think it's time to end today's video. That was my attempt to replay the 2006-2007 NHL season. What do you guys think about my simulation in NHL 07? Are you surprised to see some of the results that we found, or did you expect something crazy like this to happen? Do let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Bexy93, Burned Retinas, Clayton Hallam, Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, Raquel, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.